this is a pet peeve of mine, so I hope by the end of 5 minutes I will convince you that the mouse and keyboard are not going to die and that there's no such thing as convergence. Now, this is controversial, but so we'll start with something very uncontroversial, which is the exponential growth of computing. But what's not normally on this graph is this line, which is the capacity of human attention, which hasn't really changed over the past several thousand years. And I would actually say that we've reached a crossover point. If you actually think about a modern computer, there's actually very little computer in these computers these days, and that's the motherboard. What dominates the form factor and shape of these devices are the human interface services, the output and input. These are limited by human attention and our capacity. So what this surplus does is essentially gotten us to this age of good enough computing, which we're pretty familiar with. But what it means economically is that we can now manufacture devices for smaller and smaller needs. Rather than $10 laptops, we get products which are only good for a smaller set of activities. And we see this with the iPad and slates. And when you think about how many computing devices you actually own or carry with you, your laptop and cell phone, but actually you carry a lot more than that if you think about what's in your pocket. Your phone is one computer, but your keys probably have a computer in them as well. Your card, your credit cards, your user ID, and your badge system. You can basically buy a specialized camera for every single possible need you can imagine. So there's no convergence here. And there's a lot of focus right now around tablets and mobile phones, but I would say that the reality looks a lot more like this. You can basically buy a device with inch-level size increments in terms of display. And when you think about mouse and keyboard, they actually fall in this sort of human scale space. This is where they're good at. Ergonomically, this is where we can reach. And touch and stylus actually provide most of their value in these smaller scale devices with a premium on the surface area. And motion and gesture input generally are adopted at this end of the spectrum, and not at the other end of the spectrum. Similarly, on this sort of chart, you can plot out the emergence of where production generally happens, which is also at these sort of human scale desktop mouse and keyboard things, and conversely, consumption generally happens at the other two ends of the spectrum. So when you think about what the mouse and keyboard is good for, I would actually say that it's a minority of the way we use computers today already. But what's also going to happen is that it's not going to go away, but the genre of computing actually will just expand. And the relevance of the mouse and keyboard isn't going to go away, but it's going to become a smaller portion. So whether or not we're talking about these big new touch technologies with single people, multiple people, improvements in speech input, gesture input, improvements in inertial sensors, new sort of facial recognition technologies, other sort of computer vision-based input, new display technologies, implantable or wearable technologies as they become emergent, muscle-based input, skin-based input, or even straight-up brain-computer interfaces. All of these technologies are there to try to capture what the user's intent is. But simply latching on to your favorite technology doesn't mean you capture the intent for free. There's a lot of things that have to go into using that technology to extract user intent. And when you think about the user experience of a particular technology, I like to think about it as two parts. Is that one, the technology provides you with some probability of capturing that intent, but also there's a cost of misinterpreting the user's intent. And I think a lot of people forget about this second part when they get really excited about new technology. Any technology you think about is going to be only good over some subset of user experiences. So if you think about all the ways we use computing, there's only a certain area where it's not going to suck, basically. And you only hope that the application that you're working toward, the user starts somewhere in that working volume, ends up somewhere in that working volume, and that their entire user journey stays in that good working volume. And it's only up to someone who's a good user experience designer to make sure they stay away from those pitfalls. So good user experience design is a lot of personal skill. And the idea that there's going to be this broad-reaching new interface technology that will sweep the way we use computers is simply a myth. Even the lauded love child of modern media, of touch phones, it's important to remember that it's still less than 1% of all mobile phones on the planet, and even a smaller percentage of all computing devices we use. So I would claim that we're in this area of specialization where we can manufacture devices for smaller and smaller needs. And that means an era of divergence, not an era of convergence. And the only people that are going to do distinctive work in this space are people who actually prioritize good hardware, software, and user experience design. Thanks.